Hello and welcome to That British Homestead. My name's Nick, and today I thought I'd go through a little bit more of the sorting of the allotment and a harvest of our squash. Let's get started. So I'm going to start off with apologising. I do have a little bit of a cold. My partner, he is very sick and in bed at the moment. And there's also my street are having some awesome firework display just as I started recording. So if you do hear some bangs in the background, I'll do my best to edit them out, but just know that there's people down my street having a whale of a time, which is absolutely beautiful. So today I am removing some of these plants that are in my greenhouse because I just started to take some of the peppers. I found a mushroom as well, but my main focus here is clearing the squash from this allotment. So this allotment is basically done. The squash have sort of died off. It is getting colder and colder and colder, and I'm beginning to just clear up like the dead plants that are around this part of the allotment. As you can see, they're coming up super easily because there's not very much left of them, and there are some squashes that I'm finding along the way. So they've done so well this year, guys. I can't tell you how many squashes I've got basically enough to see me all the way through until the harvesting starts again, like loads, which is really fantastic. I'm absolutely loving them. I had some butternut squash for dinner last night with a puffy pan squash, and I kind of mashed it up in my gravy. Oh my days, it was amazing. Really enjoying them. I'm also taking this opportunity to do some weeding. As you know, the weeding does get away from us, and it is very much like a boom of weeds in the autumn months. And I know that they're just trying to, do their best and set seeds so that they can overwinter and things like that. And I understand that, but it is a bit annoying. So what I'm going to do is go through and just remove them. And I've got two piles here. I've got a pile for all of my perennial weeds, which I will burn because I'm not re-sowing them. Yeah, I've got enough of them. And I've got ones that I can put in my compost. So I'm going ahead and putting these squash plants in the compost. They will rot down and be used for a compost next year, so it'll be a great way of reusing these plants. I think it's really important to make sure that you're always making your own compost on the basis that it is so important to have compost. It's expensive, it's hard to get to the allotment, and it's important to know what goes in the allotment. You want about a 50-50 mix, which means 50% of green. I think of it like this: if it turns mushy and disgusting, it's green. If it is more like dry and crumbly, like say wood chips, it is brown. So that's kind of like a good way of thinking about it. Every so often I just go ahead and put a little bit of wood chip in there, or chicken bedding or something like that, just so that it is a bit of a balance, so it doesn't turn into a slimy, disgusting mess, or is it just too dry. I also water my compost quite a lot. So you can actually turn compost to make it compost heaps to make it turn into compost quicker. I never do that. I'm way too lazy, and I always get it in within about a year. Sometimes they say 2 years, but really you can just sieve it, take out all the big bits. Eggshells break down really, really slowly, so I tend to crush them up or powder them and then add them to the compost, or even give them to the chickens, to be honest, because they do break down slower. The problem with using chicken or even duck bedding you go ahead and just put straight on your plants. It's cold composting, it doesn't need to be composted first, but both might have some seed in there because you feed them seed, like scratch seeds, so you do get barley and things growing. I think it's awesome, and I go ahead and just pick them out and feed them back to the chickens because sprouted seeds are so good for them. But if you're not cool with doing a little bit of extra weeding, maybe take that into consideration. But if you do kind of like enclose and insulate your compost, if you are composting it, then you will go ahead and destroy them seeds, but it needs to get above 60 degrees, okay? So it's quite high for a long period of time for the enzymes in the seeds to denature. So do bear that in mind. I kind of come under the thing of just being like, whatever happens, happens. Like I said, I want to stick these into my compost. I will put lots of water in there because water basically helps the breaking down of the organic matter within that sort of time frame. I'm also making sure that there's a little bit of like soil or anything on the roots. I'm going to go ahead and make sure that it goes in there just to make a really healthy sort of environment for microbes. Additionally speaking, some people put their compost on concrete. You do want the worms to come up in there, and it's a different type of worms. They're like red in colour instead of the earthwormy looking ones that we're used to. They're called composting worms. They probably have a fancier name, but it's really important that you ensure that they are in there. So it's best to have it just flat on the floor. And then what I'm going to do is just go ahead and remove the bottom. So the reason why I'm doing this composting here on this allotment is I want to kind of compare the quality of this compost to the compost that I'm going to be making at the bottom of my chicken run, just so I have a nice little comparison, see which one's quicker and see which one is slower and which one's better quality. I think this is the main reason why I really like ducks, is because they can turn wood chips into compost within weeks. And I think the main reason they do this is because ducks love water, right? And I was thinking, oh my goodness, she has just broken new ground. No, everyone knows ducks love water, but because they're splashing in the water and you empty out the water and they're just constantly in water, and water's just everywhere with ducks. Ducks are disgusting. They poop water as well. Like, if you've ever seen a duck poo, I'll never forget when my sister come round the first ever time when we got ducks. My sister is like designer handbags, speck of dirt, throw it away sort of person, and she's talking to me, she's like, oh, the ducks are really sweet, aren't they? And as she said that, the duck pooped and it just went everywhere, like just splattered. It was like quite gross, and just the way she like recoiled from it just always makes me chuckle when I think of it. Well, that wonderful property of the duck makes them perfect for making high quality and low temperature compost. So if you have ducks, you can go ahead and scrape up the wood chip in their run like once, I think I'm over exaggerating, maybe it's like once every 6 weeks or something. It just turns to soil. So I'm actually due going in there and clearing that out. I use that at home. It smells lovely, but it is also not something that will burn your plants. You can go ahead and put it on there. I mix mine with a lot of wood chip, but like I said, the wood chip will break down really quick. So it'll break down within like a couple of months, which is fantastic. And then you go ahead and put that on your plants. And once again, like depending on what you feed them, there might be some weed seeds in there. It doesn't get hot, so it will not kill off the weed seeds. So just bear that in mind. But the ducks do a good job of digging through it and finding and eating loads of seeds anyway. So I just think that's a really interesting option. And I kind of want to decide which one I think is the best. I think I'm just going to use a combination of all three methods just because it is easier and better for me. I've had some really fantastic results with all three. I really like compost that I made, but I do find homemade compost quite dry, so that's something to bear in mind as well. If you're using it as a mulch, it doesn't particularly matter. So I do use a load of compost on here, and I will be like using horse manure, and horse manure is wonderful, but I do have to travel to get that. So in mind of like cost and carbon footprint, obviously I've got to bear that in mind. Anything that I can make on the allotment, keep on the allotment, store on the allotment, and transport around the allotment by manpower or woman power, it's always got my like seal of approval sort of thing. I've done that with my carrots. I cannot believe that I've already got a bed of carrots that are ready. I feel like I only just planted them like a couple of weeks ago, but it was in August, and they are looking absolutely fantastic. It is now almost the end of October. It's October 24th by recording, so you're not going to see this until Wednesday, I think. So that's the October the 6th. So yeah, exciting stuff. I'm really excited about putting some compost down on this. I'm just going to lift up the plastic, put the compost down, and then go ahead and pop the plastic again down on top. I find it really helps with the weed load. We do have a rule that we do need to keep our plots weed free, which I know what you're thinking, and hey, it was weed free not that long ago. Well, it wasn't, was it really? But I do endeavour to do so. So I'm going to use a bit more black plastic on here just until I kind of get the weeds manageable. You have to remember that this particular area has not been cultivated for 4 years. 4 years no one grew on this. Okay, the weeds took a very, very strong foothold. Before that, this particular plot was never really ever used in memory of this plot, okay, of people being on the plot, as in people would take it over, try, get defeated by the weeds and pass it on to the next person. So it is very, 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 very heavy on weeds. If you saw my other plot, you understand what I mean, okay? I'm not giving up, don't get me wrong. I'm like, okay, I see your weeds and I raise you some new idea that I've come up with. Dock seeds are particularly prevalent on this plot. There was a lot of docks when I first took it over, and dock seeds are just the worst. They kind of stick on things and travel around. So it is something that I'm going to be kind of addressing, and over the next couple of seasons or years or whatever, I'm going to wear down the seeds. Okay, there's only so many that can germinate. I will pick them and I will not let them go to seed. So eventually I'll kind of like weaken the perennial plants by picking the leaves, and I will overall get the annuals out over time. I'm not going, like, what can I do? I could dig it all up, I could remove the soil, there's so much I could do, but realistically speaking, I'm just going to plug away at it, and every so often I come in here, I pull all of the weeds out, and then they grow back, and then I come in here and I pull up the weeds. Easiest thing to do, cover it with plastic. I do have quite a lot of plastic, and I know that lots of you message me saying I absolutely hate plastic. I'm totally with you. Yeah, I hate plastics, I hate microplastics, but at the moment it's one of those things where, if you consider that I have a full-time job, but with my job it says that I only work like 38 hours, but I'm assuring you with the paperwork and everything, I'm probably like doubling that easily. And then I do this for enjoyment and to feed my family, so it has to kind of fit into my schedule. Okay, it's a lifestyle. So I use the black plastic to sort of reduce the weed load. I eventually want to move on to say Charles Downing's way of no dig, but until the sort of perennial weeds are killed off, I am really struggling with it. So I am going to ensure that I am using this plastic kind of to kill them and weaken them. I have removed so many stinging nettles from this plot, and they have a really firm hold. They have got a very extensive system, and as you can see, where I've done the no dig, they've come back even worse than before. So I am going to try to do my best. Basically, it's all we can do is do our best. Most of my allotments are no dig, but remember, this has been cultivated for about 70 years, so I might not be doing no dig, but the person before me I know tilled quite heavily, and this whole area here was a compost heap, so I've just flattened it down, no digging at all, and I've spread the compost out, and there is a healthy lot of stinging nettles. This has not been touched for 4 years. The person before this did heavy tilling, and it's one of those things where people will be taking a lot of nutrients out of the soil, and no one's going to be putting it back. So it is something to bear in mind when you get your own allotment and start working on your allotment plot. By the way, found this spaghetti squash. Wasn't it amazing? I'm still looking for squash, by the way. But this particular nettle patch is, look at it. I can't remember how many times I pulled this up. I'm just going to cover it with plastic and hope it dies off. Eventually it'll get really weak and die off. But like I said, it has a very, very strong foothold. I was actually pulling out the roots of this, and the roots were thicker than my arm, just muddles of roots all together. They're rhizomes, so every time you break a root and it goes into two, now you have two plants. So you've got to be careful. You can get in there and dig and sieve and things like that, but every time you dig and break it, you're making thousands more of stinging nettles. Okay, and do you know what I was thinking when I was going through this? I watched a homesteading video the other day in America, right, and they had pots, like big beautiful whiskey barrel pots, and they were gorgeous, and inside it they were like, oh, we're just going to do a harvest. I was like, oh, I love harvest. So anyway, I'm watching this, and they had stinging nettles in pots, and I'm thinking, guys, why have you got them in pots? You know, like, I cannot get rid of the blinking things. And I do wonder to myself, do they have stinging nettles in America? Because they were talking about the properties of them, and like, they are very nutritious, don't get me wrong. They are outstanding for you. I personally dislike them, but I understand what they're doing. They're making them into powder and added them to things. I find them very grassy in flavour, but what an awesome idea. I think that we kind of underuse things just in general, like rose hips. People put their nose up at them, but they are fantastic. Slowberries and things like that. So it will be something that I'm interested in. But at the moment, I've kind of got so much hatred for them kind of built up that I just kind of want to get rid of them. I just could not imagine. When I saw that, I was just like, you are cultivating them. But I do understand why they are very, very underrated and very, very, very nutritious. But it just kind of foggled the mind when both at the allotment and at home I'm struggling with nettles. But I always say, if you see stinging nettles, do not get upset. Do not worry. It means that you have fantastic soil, which is wonderful. I'm so grateful for having lovely soil. But I think from the elbows down, I'm stung red raw. So you see what I mean? Look how many docks are here. You could just tell that there was a massive dock plant here. And when I got this allotment, I don't think I understood the hatred that I developed for docks. And I went in with my sort of shredder thing that it was like a really big rotatory saw disc sort of thing, and you just got like and got rid of it all. And I just spread the seeds everywhere. But do you know what? Every year you learn a little bit more. And I'd never, before I got the allotment, sort of gardened on this scale. I'd done a lot of sort of home gardening. I've mastered home gardening. I used to walk around my home garden and be like, oh, I'm so bored. There's no weeding to be done. I wish I could pull a couple of weeds. And I used to get them like, you know, when they get their seed leaves. And I used to pick them out at that stage. I know, right? Look at the state of my allotment. And I used to be like, oh, I wish I had something more to do, because I had so much more sort of love to give and not anywhere to do it. So then I got the allotment, and it is way more, this is a lifestyle. Okay, I was explaining this at work, how I just love my allotment and things like that. And they're like, dude, that's not a hobby, that's a lifestyle. 100%. If I'm not at work, I'm here. So you can imagine I'm doing a lot of work. I try to just pop down here in the week. I don't really do very much. I might do a bit of watering. I might do a little bit of harvesting, but I'm not like digging like here because you get so filthy. But I'm absolutely loving it. It's just wonderful. I feel the happiest when I'm down here, which is just, that's what my daughter always says, Mummy, you're so happy when you're down here. I love sharing this place with my family as well. I think it's just so important to learn to garden. I did this with my grandma when I was little. When I say I did it with her, I kind of was in the garden willfully ignoring her as she did amazing things that I wish I paid attention to. However, I have to say, I don't know whether it was through osmosis or through some other means, but I've learned so much from her. So when it comes for things that she's taught me, like home gardening, I just have like a sixth sense. Allotment gardening or growing anything that my grandma happened not to grow, I did struggle with. All right, my grandma never grew a squash plant or a cucumber, which I just don't understand because they're just so fantastic to grow, but she just never did. So it was something that I kind of learnt all by myself. And my grandma was one of them people that I don't remember a single weed being in her garden, and she was a digging method, and she used to do, you know, where you dig over and then you let the frost break it down and spread in the horse manure. It's probably some of the happiest memories of my childhood was out in the garden, kind of like just playing when my nan was gardening. I loved that, and I remember sitting on the side and her making pickles and green tomato chutney. Yes, if you grow tomatoes, oh my voice, if you grow tomatoes, you know the love of like, I've grown these, I'm going to do something with them. I've made that exact same recipe, bless my nan, and I just love it. It feels the closest to sort of meditation when I'm out here. I just love it so much, even when it's pouring down a rain or I'm pulling stinging nettles. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, what way I should be eating these. But to be honest, I don't think I'll ever find a way of loving stinging nettles. But if you do know a way of loving stinging nettles, let me know. Because look at all of this abundance. If we could turn this into food, I'd be one happy bunny. Because to be honest, I don't want to brag, okay? I know you're thinking, she's bragging. But I'm amazing at growing stinging nettles. You give me a patch of land and I will grow stinging nettles on them. As you can see, I've grown them at home. I grow them here and I grow them everywhere. Look at how healthy these roots are, guys. Do you know what? I used really nice compost on this bit, and sadly my compost had stinging nettles. I don't know if it had stinging nettles in it or it fertilised the stinging nettles, but I did an outstanding job of making sure that these were so healthy. Look how green they are. I know what you're thinking. Wow, she's very good at this. I've pulled these up a few times. I kind of get it away from me. In the summer, I don't have time to do anything. I'm literally either canning, cooking, or I'm harvesting. So you can see how it kind of gets out of hand. I've also got a lot of brambles, but I am slowly getting it. It does take time, guys. The thing is I feel that when people get allotments, they do think like, oh, I've got an allotment, I'm not going to have a single weed, it's going to be easy, I'm just going to put some plants in the ground and boom, I'm self-sufficient. The reality is that you will be doing a lot of this, a lot of weeding, repetitive weeding, and slowly weakening plants over time. Honestly, if you think, oh my goodness, why is she doing this? I have a fantastic way of getting rid of stinging nettles, and it's just like this and this. Please let me know, because I will just love you forever. So I don't want to use any weed killer or anything like that because it's so close to my garden beds. So I'm just going to go ahead and go through and plug away at it. I'm going to like just make sure that I'm pulling it whenever I have the opportunity, I can get to it, and over time I'll wear it down. I have found that over time it's getting easier and easier and easier. My next plot I had for slightly longer, and that is getting easier and easier and easier as well. They are very easy to pull out though, because it is no dig. They're kind of just coming out of the soil because it's so loose and not compacted, making weeding so much nicer. So here I've got a load of squash. These are all the found squash. So this is the best harvest. It's found squash. Look at that. Got a whole basket and another spaghetti squash, which is awesome. I'm loving these squash this time of year. I'm like just loving it. Look at that beautiful basket. This is all of the harvest that I've literally found whilst clearing up. It is awesome, and I can't believe how much I've got. I literally was like, oh, I'll only bring one basket, I won't have much to harvest because it's basically finished for the year. I was so mistaken. I mean, look at all of those squashes. Jasmine was very helpful as well, helping feed the chickadee in the background. And I just want to say thank you, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye. If you haven't so already, please consider subscribing. Bye bye.